tell us what it's all about. Giles Gilbert Scott, wasn't he the man who designed St Pancras Station?
Yes. Yeah. And keep that in mind, because it's that kind of flavour that George Gilbert Scott gave to the 19th century that dominates our imaginations. But the wonderful thing is you don't find it here.
Yes. This new East End is very respectful to the rest of the church. Unlike a lot of Victorian restorations, which they decided the middle point of the period was the pinnacle of British church architecture, and so everything had to be middle pointed. This is quite definitely a Norman extension.
So what about this reredos here? What about this altar, whatever you call it, this altar painting? Is that very typical of Victorian restoration? Because it looks rather Catholic, doesn't it?
Yes, there are two things there. I mean, it comes, it's 1878, 1879, and it was George Gilbert Scott's son, John Aldridge Scott, who was brought in to furnish the East End here, and he designed that. And let's face it, that's unmistakably Gothic.
Yes.
You know, lots and lots of spiky pinnacles, great corona at the top there.
It was quite Germanic to me.
Yes, yeah. And the lovely stars above. And this was, in terms of imagination, Catholic in the broad sense of the word, because the model for Gothic was a medieval one, when the church in this country was undivided. There was just one church. And they went back to the models that survive from the Middle Ages. Hence the saints, you know, there's Michael and there's George there, and next to them on the upper tier, Peter and Paul, and then the lower tier are the evangelists, St Matthew, St Mark, St Luke and St John. And between is this lovely, said to be based on English rather than German or French models, picture of the crucifixion with that lovely sort of gold background that kind of makes you think of the event as timeless. And the two figures, Our Lady, Mary the Mother of Jesus on the left, and St John, beardless, young, on the right, and between them the Saviour hangs looking down at his mother. Maybe one is to think of that passage in St John's Gospel where he says, you know, mother, behold thy son, son, behold thy mother. And the start of this belief that after the resurrection, St John looked after Mary. And that actually reminds you of the fact that it's a very remarkable thing that Scott came to this church and did what he did. The story is, the East End had been rebuilt in the 17th century and it was ruinous. It had to come down. And Scott did what you would imagine every good Victorian architect would do. He produced a new design in the decorated manner. So we would have sort of, you know, nice interlacing windows, window tracery. And when they started to take down the old chancel, we discovered more and more Romanesque work, more and more original St Peter's work. And to his great credit, he sort of went against the drift of the times. He went against, you know, the belief that middle pointed Gothic was the best thing. And he reproduced, or he recreated, this Romanesque space. And I think that says an awful lot for the tact and sensitivity of the man and his modesty. He wasn't going to stamp himself on another English parish church. He was going to do something that was in keeping with, what would you word, respectful.
Respectful of the rest of the fabric. Yes.
the office was so large he didn't keep an eye on things. But 1850, he was just beginning to be established. He had an assistant, and the great architect Bodley was his assistant then. Again, I said he took it seriously. He wasn't going to impose the inappropriate on. And so often with Victorians, you think, they're very interesting, they're vigorous, but the one thing they lack is a concern for, an aesthetic concern for what's going on around him. Not here. He did what I think is in keeping with the spirit and the tone, the texture, as well as the style of the building. The other thing we haven't said, of course, is that it wasn't just eye level, it was down here. These lovely encaustic tiles that take the eye up to the high altar.
Would they be locally made?
Probably
Or
Stoke.
they could bring from Stoke.
Probably Dalton, or and Scott also did the roof. So it's down there and up there. Quietly and unobtrusively, he's everywhere.
For £1,153 or something. That's amazing, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.